You are listening to the Taps and Teas Show, weekly conversations for people passionate about marketing, golf, and craft beer. Marty is the co-founder of Bad Rhino, an award-winning digital marketing agency helping golf and craft beer brands get real results in social media marketing. Here is your host, Marty McDonald.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Taps and Teas, and we're continuing this interview series with marketers. And I'm pretty excited to have all these people come on. But this person I just met recently, he's a member of some of the mastermind groups that I'm in. And he was dropping knowledge on these Zoom calls that we've been having, and was really impressed that he actually knows, what he's talking about. And I think that's important, that whether you own a craft brewery or you're in the golf business and you're evaluating who you're going to bring on to do all of your work, you need to have people that you can trust. You need to have people that have a lot of good information and background. And Jason Smith is definitely one of those people. He founded Spotlight Social. And before that, he had an interesting background as an LA police officer for about 13 years. He lives in LA with his wife and 2 children. His story of kind of just going through the police force and then leaving that for digital marketing has been all over the place. And you can actually find it on Digital Marketer if you're familiar with that. Can take a look at that and listen to it in depth. But when he's not doing all his fun stuff on Instagram, Facebook, he enjoys wakeboarding, wake surfing, and riding motocross. So without any more information, let's introduce Jason. Jason, how you doing today?
Good. How you doing today?
Doing very well, buddy. Really appreciate you coming on. Why don't you add in and tell us a little bit more about yourself other than my stellar intro there?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Not sure I deserved all that, but yeah, no. Yeah, so again, my name is Jason Smith. Yeah, the journey that led me to found Spotlight Social was kind of crazy. As you said, I was a policeman for LAPD for a little over 13 years, almost 14 years actually. And was just getting tired of that lifestyle, working a ton. And I didn't work all the nice neighborhoods. I worked, South LA, Watts, and if anyone's familiar with Los Angeles, East LA, Boyle Heights, all those areas are the mecca for gang members and shootings and, homicides and all that stuff. And to give you a little example of how violent it was, in a 6 square mile area in one of my areas, there was over 200 homicides in 1 year. So in 6 square miles. Yeah. So that'll give you a little taste of what I was dealing with for 13 years. And yeah, it just got old. I was ready to kind of look for something, but I didn't really know exactly what to do. Or, cops always work these side gigs and part-time jobs and stuff. And I was looking to kind of make the move. And, I've been involved in tons of violent situations, and I noticed it was wearing on my personal life. And, it's just, you don't, as a policeman, you don't do any personal development. You don't read books. You just, you go to the ghetto all day or all night, I should say, because I work nights, and, chase gang members all night and, getting fights, and yeah, it's pretty crazy. So,
yeah, no, I think, with police and firemen and everything else, and I think that those jobs are so critical, right?
Right.
Number one, and you lived it, right?
Yep.
So, but I think the other side of it is people need to understand, just the general population needs to understand what the work environment is really like. There's so much different, crazy sensationalism, and I'm not taking this podcast in that direction.
Yeah.
I just think what you said there was, you're a police officer, you're working nights, it weighs heavy on your family. And it's like, people see a uniform or a badge and they don't remember that there's a person in there. And I think that's one of the things that when you look out in the landscape of anywhere, any country, anytime, you always have to remember that, like, there's people just doing a job, right?
Right.
And you kind of move from there. And I can imagine it weighed on you and doing all that. What gave you like that marketing bug? Like, most policemen that I know that retired or got out of it, they're like, work with their hands and they're kind of doing manual stuff, not only for their mind, just to kind of get that right, but what would make you jump into marketing?
Yeah, so it was kind of a crazy story. One of my friends at the time, a few years ago, when I left the police department, when I was thinking about kind of leaving, he owned a supplement company, like fitness products and stuff, proteins and, all that stuff. And this was kind of when Facebook ads was, it was underway, but it wasn't as detailed, obviously, it is now. And he's like, hey, I'm thinking about running like some Facebook ads. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I wasn't even really on Facebook because as a policeman, I didn't really want people all up in my Kool-Aid, on Facebook. So
Right.
I like created a Facebook account just to like, because my buddy was like, hey, I'm going to run some ads. He's like, it was like one of those things. You're like in conversation with a friend, right? And you're like, hey, dude, I'll help you out. Kind of like working on a truck or anything, right? Like, oh, dude, I'll help you out. And even though I didn't really know what I was doing, he didn't know what he was doing. And little did I know, I actually was pretty creative, which I never really tapped into. And what I mean by that is like, ad copy and creative and stuff. I guess I had like an eye for it, and I wrote a bunch of ad copy, and lo and behold, like his Facebook ads were like killing it. And,
Right.
and I'm like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And then, doing the research of Facebook ads, I ended up stumbling across a certification program that basically said, hey, if you want to become an agency owner, work from home, and of course, as a policeman, I'm really cynical. And I was like, yeah, this work from home crap is just a bunch of crap, right? I was like, nobody works from home. It makes money. These are all MLM people who like
Sure.
bug their family, and, but I ended up just saying, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to dive in and see what happens. And I literally showed up to the certification, dropped a lot of money to be there, showed up to certification. I actually thought I was in the wrong room or the wrong area, because here I am, at the time I had a really long beard, long hair, tattoos. I like my flannel on, typical, like, guy from LA or whatever. I walk in and there's all these guys in like shirts and ties. And I'm like, holy crap, I think I'm in the wrong place. And they're all talking about, how they're making 30 grand a month and all this stuff. And here I am, some dumb policeman walks through the door, right? I'm like, man, what have I gotten myself into? But literally, after sitting there the first day, listening to these guys talking about how they had clients, they work from home, they have all this time freedom. And I had no time freedom. I was working 12-hour shifts, testifying as a gang expert, weapons expert, which sounds cool, right? You're like, oh man, that's cool. It's not
Probably
that cool.
after the first time, not so much, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because you getting called into court on your days off. And I was gone. Like I literally lived at the station. I'd be at the station for like 3 or 4 days straight sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing these guys and it's like, what am I doing? And they're making 5 times the amount of money I am,
Right.
And money isn't important, but it's pretty important, And
Yeah, if you want to.
and all these guys
yourself.
are talking. Yeah, exactly. And all these guys are talking about how they get to go on field trips with their kids and get to go to all their games. And here I am working every weekend in a gang unit and all this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I need to like really seriously, I don't know, get my priorities straight, I guess you could say. So second day comes around. This was a 7-day intensive course too. It wasn't just like a couple days and you get to leave and, you're good to go. And yeah, the second day I just really dove in and left that certification with all the tools I needed to like start a little agency. One of the guys actually kind of believed in me and gave me a couple clients right off the bat, applied all the information that I learned at the certification and started getting my first couple clients, really good results. And then that snowballed into 10 clients a few months later, like literally. And I would say in about 6 months, I was making about 20 grand a month, which I was totally blown away. And I literally walked into the station, threw my resignation down and was like, peace out. I'm out of here.
Right.
So it all moved very fast, but it was crazy. It was a crazy process. So,
yeah, no, that's, I mean, the more and more so I've been doing this for 18 years, marketing. It started off for myself as a hobby that became a well-paying hobby that then eventually became an agency. And, all the things over the years that I've seen, I totally get what you're saying, like walking into a room and you kind of think of like all this weird stuff. And I've worked in affiliate marketing and network marketing to a degree as a consultant. And it's really fascinating, like when you really pull apart all the marketing things that I've seen over the last 18 years. And sometimes you get lost in the shuffle of it. And I have corporate clients now and bigger clients with Bad Rhino. And the funniest thing is, and you mentioned it, is like, you hear people talk about it, right? Like the working from home part. No, that's not so much what drew me in there. But I could totally see how it draws somebody like you in there. And what's impressed me, the first time I heard you speak on the Zoom call, I think we were with Joey. Which Joey's going to be on the podcast next week. Cool. But the funniest thing was like, like my ears perked up. I'm like, this dude knows what he's talking about. Now, mind you,
Well,
we're in a group.
it.
Yeah, we're in a group that the majority of people in there know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But what really popped up is as soon as I heard you speak about a few things about just PPC and a handful of other things that you're currently doing, I was like, damn, I'm like, I got to talk to this dude. And I reached out, I think, right on that Zoom. I was like, I got to talk to this guy, because my whole point in saying that is you have, and the whole point of why I'm doing this little series here and people that are listening to it is you do have to be cautious of who you hire. You know, so many times my agency replaces an agency, quote unquote, I use air quotes there, that said they would do certain things and they didn't do any of them. Right. And my clients or the new clients coming to me and they're gun shy. Right. And if you're listening to this, you do want to do your due diligence on everybody. And you do want to find out, just because they're younger and you might be older, you might think they know technology better than you. They don't. Right? We're just currently replacing a team, an entire team of people that the owner thought since they were, you know, younger, that they understood everything. And the nuances in digital marketing are so crazy. So you take that whole thing, like Jason just said, you know, he put the work in to go and get the right things and change his own mindset in there, which is awesome. So like right now, like what's kind of like the interesting areas that you're working in, and you know, what's kind of fun for you right now in marketing?
Gosh, I mean, there's so much. That's a loaded question for sure, especially in the Facebook and Instagram, you know, paid ads world, you know. But you know, I think the thing that we're working on right now with a couple clients is a lot of clients are really, you know, and you can do this on Facebook fairly easily, is go more global than just concentrate on maybe the country you live in. Like this particular client I'm talking about, you know, they were founded in the UK, live in the UK. 90% of their business right now is the UK. But what they're doing is they're actually building landing pages in other languages, 17 other languages to be exact. And Facebook has a tool called dynamic language optimization where you can actually plug in the base language, which in our case would be English, right? And then literally build a campaign and put in Spanish, Dutch, you know, any language you want, Japanese, you know, whatever you want in there. And based on the language that they choose, and Facebook knows that, it will translate that ad from English into their native language. And we've just seen like a huge uptick in sales because of that one simple thing we did. You know, I mean, we're going like globally now, not really worldwide, but you know, to countries that we thought could do really well. I mean, you know, Italy and just all these countries. And amongst all the pandemic and everything going on right now, all of our clients are seeing like Black Friday numbers, which is pretty awesome. So if you're timid at all right now about running ads, don't be, because you could be super successful. Now, granted, you got to have the right person running your ads, kind of like what you said before, right? But if you have the right person, and you can, you know, and you don't necessarily have to trust that person, but as much, you know, I mean, because they're always gun shy when they first start, but
sure.
But yeah, no, so that's kind of pretty cool. And actually, Facebook reached out to me yesterday, and we had a big call with marketing science and, you know, their measurement team and all that stuff. And we're actually probably going to do a case study on this, because not a lot of companies, surprisingly, are using the options that Facebook has to translate. They're just running it all in their native language, you know? So yeah, so it's pretty cool. So Facebook reaching out to us as an agency and wanting us to kind of head up the fight and letting other advertisers know and other businesses know that they have the ability to translate, and it's pretty well, actually translates really good. It's pretty cool. So that's kind of cool stuff we're working on right now. So it'll be pretty awesome. So I'll have to drop the case study for you guys once we get it done, you know?
Yeah,
so check it out.
I'll share that all over. I think, you know, your point there, and I think this is a very big point, and this is why I wanted to have Jason on, because like I said, you know, when I heard him talk about what he was doing, I could tell he knew what he was talking about. And the interesting part is, you know, like he said, like right now, and we'll get to, you know, the coronavirus here in a second, but the big thing is you need to have somebody that knows what they're doing. Now, if you've ever heard me speak somewhere or on another podcast, I will tell everybody that you should not look at your ads on a daily basis. Like whoever's running them, look at them on a daily basis.
Right.
Now, because we're in this little pandemic, we're recording this right here at the tail end of April here in 2020. But now I'm recommending you look at them more because things have changed rapidly. And you can, if you've never done it, run some ads right now and probably see some bigger success because of just the way the market is and what people are doing. But I will tell you this with a caveat. You have to know what you're doing because things have changed really quick. I'm amazed. Like we were doing certain things for a client in the past week or so, and the amount of change that went in there that you needed to understand what the changes in the algorithms were going on and read the data. Yeah, I was really impressed not only with my team, but me jumping in there too and, putting my hat back on. And I'm like looking at this and I'm like, I've never seen it change so fast, but it's exciting.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that you can capitalize on if you're running paid ads. So let's just get into that a little bit with, like I said, we're recording this here in April 2020 from home. We're all in lockdown, depending on where you're at, some degree of lockdown or more so than anything. But what are you seeing just in your business and over the past 6 weeks with all this?
Oh man. Well, one thing I am preparing my clients for, and you know how it is with any marketing, like when things are going good, that's when you need to like take a step back and say, okay, we need to plan for when it's not going good. And I told my clients, I've all of them, and I said, hey, listen, this is great that it's going like this, super low costs on Facebook and Instagram. More people are on. I think I had a PDF from our partner manager at Facebook sent us the other day and some numbers, and it was like 58% increase on Facebook, 36% increase on Instagram. Obviously, people are not shopping at brick and mortar stores right now, all that stuff. So online activity's gone up. But I told all my clients, I said, I do not want you to think this is going to be the norm because it's not. It's going to end. It could be a month from now. It could be 5 months from now. But I don't want you to think this is going to continue like this. Let's capitalize on this and we can, scale up a little bit. But I don't want you to think that this is going to be the new normal because it's not. Mm-hmm. It's going to go back to the way it was before, right? Like when the world, when the coronavirus and all this stuff kind of is behind us, and who knows when that'll be, but we need to start planning for that now, right? Because if not, then you're going to be standing there going, wait a second, why did my ads just completely fall off a cliff? And it's because everybody's back to work now, and your targeting has to change. Your ad copy has 100%. To change. Like people are in a different mindset. So it was a shift coming into this. And what I mean by that is I had every client saying, hey, let's talk about the coronavirus and all this stuff. And then Facebook put a bunch of restrictions on that. Like you can't even mention COVID-19 or pandemic in your ad copy. If you do, your ad account will get shut down and they will not let you advertise again. So they're that strict about it right now. Yeah.
And
it's pretty crazy.
Will shut it down in a heartbeat.
In a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Good
luck actually, trying to do anything.
Yeah, right. And actually what's happening right now is all these ads are getting disapproved that shouldn't be disapproved, but literally they're just disapproving everything if their little trolling bot sees one word or a comma even that looks out of place. Everything's getting disapproved. So we're, half of our day right now is literally spent because we have a higher level of access with Facebook. So I can actually chat with somebody at Facebook and say, hey, what's going on? Why are these disapproved? And they can push them through to get them approved. And it's really frustrating, for us because, I don't always like to talk about all the good stuff that goes on. And Facebook's a great platform. It's awesome. We're getting great results for our clients. But people also need to know, too, that, it doesn't always go awesome, right? Like,
true.
It goes sideways sometimes. And that's okay, though. That's part of marketing, and stuff's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, all in all, though, we've seen, I guess I feel bad in a way because I see all these people jobless, and here we are, like just going nuts, and we're busier than ever right now. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we are too.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're hearing on the show and want more, head on over to tapsandtees.info and get our free report with game-changing tips and strategies straight to your inbox. Just enter your info and stop being stuck with no marketing plan.
My business partner and I were talking last night, and he's like, He's like, I got a question for you. And I'm like, uh-oh. Because that's like been like the whole thing, like since this whole thing started, it's like, oh shit, like what do we got to talk about now? And he's like, I feel really weird. And I'm like, what? He's like, we closed two big clients in the past week. And he's like, everyone's asking how we're doing. And he's like, actually doing pretty good. We had to, we had to do some changes with our employees right out of the gate just to help protect them. But now like all that will be back to normal here in a very short period of time. But at the same time, it's like looking at all this and it's really busy. But I wanted to bring up two quick points that Jason just said, because I think it's important for anybody that's listening. When you hire an agency or you hire somebody, what Jason just said is the first thing is have a long-term strategy. If they can't talk to you in 6 months, a year, 18-month type increments, they are not the person you want running your ads. Now, there's a day-to-day piece and there's an immediacy. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But if they can't look into their crystal ball and help guide you 6 months down the road and ask questions, that's a huge red flag if they don't do that. Number two, I loved when we, it was about 4 years ago. I think we got one of the first Facebook reps based on so much we were spending on Facebook through our ad accounts. Yeah. And it's worth its weight in gold. And that's another question that if you're planning to run some bigger ads, I would say more than $10,000 a month seems to trigger that. So if you're interviewing or you're working with somebody and the question you want to ask them if they're going to run your ads or you want them to run your ads is ask them if they have a direct Facebook rep. Because if they don't, they've never really done big business on Facebook.
Exactly.
And this is why I'm bringing people like this on, because I want to get these out here because it is a crazy time and we're going to get back to beer and golf. There's a ton of other interviews that we have coming up, but these are important because, whether you hire somebody like Bad Rhino or you go out and you go and you hire somebody like Jason, these are good people that I'm bringing on because I want people to be educated when they're doing it and it's helpful. So let's move out of like the marketing thing but we'll have one last question about marketing. What do you hate about marketing? You rattled off everything you disliked about being a police officer.
Yeah.
But what do you hate? And I don't mean it that it's like, I've been clarifying this question. Like, what have you found in the industry that you're just like, oh my gosh, like, why does this even exist? Or something that just irks you? You don't have to hate it. That's a harsh word, but what just gets under your skin about it?
Well, that's a good question, and I will answer that with, I'm totally on the same page with you where, people just don't know what they're doing, and it really ticks me off, like really bad. I just want to like slap them, because what's happening and what I find is like, I'll bring clients on, and then they're in these Facebook groups. And then they're like, hey, so in this Facebook group, I heard that we should be testing this way. Why aren't you guys doing that? And I'm like, I just have to kind of like take a step back, and just say, okay, listen, like, how much did you pay to get into that Facebook group? We pay $100 a month. You really think you're going to get a ton of value out of that? You know what I mean? Like, if you hire an agency, get out of the damn Facebook group, and again, I don't mind. If you want to come to me and say, hey, let's tweak the ad copy, let's do this, let's, strategize, awesome, right? But when it comes to like stuff like that, I'm just like, man, like we kind of know what we're doing here, and we're actually updated on all the tried and true things that actually work on Facebook right now, and these groups are just hilarious, And then the other thing that, if I could just piggyback on that, the other thing is, people like you said who don't know what they're doing, right? Agency owners, or I hear it daily almost when I talk to people like, oh, the last guy totally messed up my ads, right?
Right.
Like, and I'm not hiring. Facebook ads don't work because no one knows how to. I'm like, okay, like it really just gets under my skin because all these other guys who don't know what they're doing, like you said, right, give us a bad name, and then we have to go into conversations talking about like, okay, well, what differentiates you from the other agency? And, I also think a life experience comes into that too, man. I've been around 100%. The block. Okay. I've been around the block, dude. Like, there's nothing that you're going to tell me that's going to like intimidate me or, and I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. I'm just saying, like, going from getting shot at, being involved in shootings, all that stuff to like the marketing world, and you trying to like call me out on stuff. I'm just going to, just kind of laugh it off and just be like, dude, okay, cool. Like, awesome.
Like, you understand what I've seen? I mean, and done. And like you said, being shot at, like, I think those types of things give us so much perspective, but we're going to extend this little segment a little bit longer because I got to tell you a story that I think you'll get a kick out of.
Yeah.
So I'm the same way. Like, I've been like, you don't want to admit, like, sometimes it's like I'll be 45 in July and I don't feel old. And, but like when I add up like all the years of marketing experience and then running an agency for 10 years, it's frustrating as hell when there's like and I'm not knocking the, like, quote unquote, not knocking the hustle. Like, I understand.
Yeah. You got to work hard.
Like
you got to hustle.
Yeah.
Right?
And
sure.
It's like a 25-year-old kid. And I don't mean this to be disparaging because I know some 25-year-old agency guys that are crushing it and girls that are just doing really well. But then everyone tries to mimic what they think. And I got into this meeting and our client is sitting there and he's rattling off all these ideas. And I'm sitting there and he's doing the same thing. Well, I read this and I did this and I was on here and I'm like, and I'm looking at him and I'm just staring at him. And I was like, are you done? Because I don't want to interrupt you with all these brilliant ideas you have. And I was a little, pissed.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you mean? He's like, aren't you guys doing all this stuff? And I go, no. I go, no, we're not. And he's like, well, all these things, these people that are doing this and they're showing like all these results. And I'm like, this is a mid-sized company that's getting, 99-cent information from places, right? I'm like,
right.
I'm like, so I just said to him, I said, my first thing was, I went to a state school. I didn't spend a ton of money on my education for college.
Yeah.
So when I got out and I started realizing what I needed to learn, I said, I've spent well over 300, almost probably close to $500,000 now on my marketing education. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because it doesn't stop. Right. So I'm like, if you're reading that, I've already read it. And I said, and on the other side, I go, do you know the fastest way I go out of business? And he's like, no. If I took all the ideas my clients had and I started to run with them because they're not going to work.
Exactly.
And I go, when you walk in, the doctor goes, you need heart surgery and 2 of your arteries are clogged. Do you go, well, I read over here that if I eat this herb, I can clear up my arteries. And the doctor goes, well, yeah, that's partially true, but you're well past that point. Do you go, no, we're going to do this instead. Like, no, you don't. You go, well, what's going to happen? Well, if you don't get this surgery very, very soon, you're going to die.
Right.
I'm like, I'm not saying marketing is life or death like that, but the pushback is so funny. And it comes from a spot where they fall for the marketing. And I'm like, do you understand like the process here? You fell for the marketing.
Yep.
And that's what we're putting in place. So I could talk about that for hours, but I want to kind of move in here and start to close this out. Random question, and you have an interesting background. And I was trying to think of like the random question I wanted to ask you. And I was like, I think we'll save that for like when we're talking, not being recorded. But, just in, that shift going from, starting out as a police officer, what made you get in to be a police officer?
Well, kind of a long line. So my dad is, at the time he wasn't retired, but retired FBI. My brother was a fireman, and, growing up in like a smaller town of Los Angeles, about, an hour and a half north of Los Angeles, that's just kind of what everybody was doing. And it was a good, I didn't like school as much. So, I never finished college. Right. But it was one of those things. And then I, looking at my dad, it was cool. Right. Like, oh man, FBI agent, but I was more hands-on. I'm a little bit more, I like to fight it up with people and stuff, hands-on, like to use my hands. So I didn't want to be stuck behind a desk so much. So I applied for the police. So I only applied for 2 police departments. It was the LA County Sheriff's and LAPD. And LAPD is the first one that hired me. And then a week later, Sheriff said, hey, would you come to our academy? I said, well, LAPD beat you to it. But yeah, it was more of just like, I thought it was the cool thing to do. it wasn't a story where I'm like, oh, I wanted to be a police officer since I was 4 years old. Like,
Gotcha.
People will say that, but it's, that's not really why they want to become a police officer. A lot of these guys become policemen because they think it's cool. And then you figure out it's not that cool, 10 years into it. But yeah, I mean, it was really just hey, I get to carry a gun and work the streets of LA, like, the biggest police department besides New York, like in the world, best training and all that stuff. And you just kind of look at it as a whole. And I didn't go into it like, because a lot of guys, that's all they want to do, right? Is, I got to get hired. And then they don't get hired. And then it's like, what do they do? But I was the opposite. I was like, hey, I'm going to test. If I get hired, cool. I actually already had a good job. I was in medical sales before that. And I was a cranial maxillofacial, big long word there, like sales rep for Stryker. So I already had a good job. I was actually making more money doing that than I was as a police department. And I actually took a pay cut. But again, it's like, oh man, it's a cool job, right? I should have stayed there probably, but then I would have never taken the marketing path probably. Just, and I always liked guns, grew up around guns. My dad was a big gun guy and was shooting all the time and all that good stuff. So that's kind of why I took the plunge originally.
That's awesome. No, that's really cool. I think when people go into those things, it's not just like a decision. I think it's just inherently somewhere in their system that they can do that job. Because I know I couldn't. I don't have the patience to be a police officer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tough job. People criticize policemen a lot. I mean, I even criticize stuff that I watch all the time. But you got to remember too, like, at LAPD, I was involved in stressful situations every single night. Like I was chasing gang members, with AK-47s. You know what I mean? Like they were running with rifles in their hands from me. So like it was, and then you get a police officer who's caught on tape doing something stupid. Well, dude, he's probably scared. He's probably a little nervous. Like most policemen don't draw their gun 20 times a night like I used to when I was a policeman, because they weren't dealing with the violence, right? For me, it was second nature to run after a gang member and, tackle them and fight with them a little bit because you guys aren't going to jail, so they'll fight with you, and it's just the way it is, and it sucks, but what are you going to do? I'm just so glad I'm out
go
of
into
it.
marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's funny. I just want to mention too, my parents, when I quit the police department, like a week later, my parents told me, they're like, you look 10 years younger.
I'm sure.
Like seriously, I was happier. I was at home. Like I was making pretty decent money at the time. I felt good, and I looked 10 years younger, and I'm actually your age, and I think I look pretty good, for my age. And I tell you what, if I was still a policeman, I'd have a lot more gray hair and I wouldn't look like the way I look now. That's for sure. So,
good for you, man. Yeah. So since this is, normally beer and golf that we talk a lot about, do you drink beer, dude?
I used to. I'm kind of taking a break from beer, but I used to drink a lot of dark, high alcohol content beer. So that was my thing. I'm like, give me the strongest beer you got. I'm more of a whiskey guy. I like, whiskey and just straight on the rocks and down it and, all that good stuff. But I did drink a beer, I think from Chicago. What was it called? Something Goose. It had a picture of
Goose Island.
There we go. Goose Island. I really like that one. And one of my buddies gets it imported there from Chicago there. Cause I don't think you can buy those in the store. I don't believe you can. Maybe you can now.
Yeah. In certain parts of the country, I don't know what it is out west. Goose Island was, an independent brewery, and then they got bought. They have a bigger footprint now, but yeah, they make some decent beers. A little bit different now than it used to be, but still pretty solid.
Yeah. And I used to hang out at Golden Road a lot.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. That was right by my house in LA when I used to live in LA, like, pretty close to the city. And yeah, I liked hanging out at Golden Road. And then they got bought out by, I think, Anheuser-Busch. And then, of course, all the eccentric people in LA got all pissed off and stopped going there. So
yeah, they had when right before they got bought, they started distributing out here, out in the East Coast, and right before, and they had Wolf Pup, which was their session IPA, which I love. Yep. And then being a craft beer guy, like I still have an occasional Miller Lite or a High Life, but I try and stay away from the big macro beer.
Yeah.
Now you don't strike me as a golfer.
Nope, definitely not a golfer. Run ads for a golf coach, though.
That's right.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
I remember talking about that. So this is a good question, because when people don't golf, and obviously I always ask the question of like how you perceive the sport as well as how you perceive the marketing of the sport. Because I've been in the golf industry in one way, shape, or form from a marketing perspective for close to 6 years. And the one thing I just did a presentation on Wednesday for the PGA section of Philadelphia.
Oh,
and
wow.
it's always interesting when you start talking about the marketing. So now to golfers means something totally different. So asking somebody that doesn't play golf, but then is involved in marketing, and I'm sure it's successful knowing how you run everything. What's your perception of the whole thing?
Well, I growing up where I grow up now, I don't know. I'm sure you've probably heard of it. Have you heard of the Sherwood golf course?
Yes.
Yeah. So PGA plays there. I live like 15 minutes from Sherwood. So growing up where I grew up now, golfing it's not huge, but I mean, Sherwood's right there. So I always, golfing to me is like a rich guy's sport, right? Like that's how I grew up seeing it, because, Lake Sherwood right there and all that. And you got Tiger Woods playing there and all these prominent guys playing at Sherwood. So that's growing up. And then it kind of changed a little bit. But for me, golf is like a language that I just can't speak. That's my best description. And then when we took on this coach who we run ads for, it was funny when he sent all this content over, and he's talking about how, you maximize your swing and doing all this stuff. And I'm just like, dude, is the normal person going to be able to understand this? Because I don't understand what's going on here. And he's like, yeah, trust me, don't worry about it. People will understand that, like what I'm talking about in these videos and stuff. And I said, okay. But no, it was a bit of a challenge for us to like wrap our heads around, like, how do we write ad copy for this, and sound
Sure.
like George Gankis is our client. And like, how do we sound like him, But it turns out, I mean, I'm happy to say that I was a little wrong coming into it, because, it's a great sport. That I've met some people running ads for him that are just super cool dudes. And I'm like, oh man, I could totally hang out and, have a drink with this guy any day. Right. Like, so my golf view was misconstrued when I was younger, but I've grown to love it from afar, I guess you could say.
Yep. No, I think that perception is common. I mean, I mean, it's not a cheap thing to get into. I was lucky. Right. My grandfather gave me his old clubs, and I don't know whether he made me, but I was always enthralled. Like, he always had golf on TV when I was like, so I was young. So this is like very early 80s. And he would always be watching what was kind of brand new going into that point was what was called the Seniors Tour. Now they call it Champions Tour. Mm-hmm. And so I was like always watching like Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus and all those guys.
Yeah.
And then I was like 11 or 12 was the first time I like went out, and I was like hooked right away.
Really?
But mind you, like, I mean, didn't have a ton of money growing up. I wasn't, destitute, but I was always paying like after 4, I had my parents drop me off, and, I was paying like
awesome.
$8 at the public course, which definitely was not the nicest course in the world, but you wanted to go play. And my buddies and I used to go out and play, and I was hooked ever since. But there's two things to that sport, right? You have what you perceive, right? Which is the high end, and it totally exists, right? That.
Yeah.
And then you also have what I call is just like the blue collar golf. And that's where I've always been involved. I was, not until I was older did I play many high end country clubs. But like you put, that whole atmosphere, it takes money to get in, but it comes down to like that same camaraderie and that fun stuff that you were talking about. So it's always interesting with the marketing of the sport and what the perceptions are. So, dude, I really appreciate it. We went a little bit longer than we normally do on these interviews, just because I think you have some interesting. I would have cut it off if I didn't want to hear it. You have a really good perspective, and I appreciate you coming on. What where can people reach you and just put out your stuff there?
Yeah, for sure. So if you want to get a hold of us, you can email me at jason@spotlightsocialllc.com, or our site. You can fill out a contact form there on our site, which is spotlightsocialadvertising.com, and would love to chat with anybody who wants to reach out to us. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and let me tell my story. It's always hard for me to talk about myself. I don't know why, but I always tend to say, "No, let me talk about you." But no, I do appreciate it, man. And thanks for all the props too. It's good also to deal with people who know what they're doing, especially being in our mastermind and stuff. It's it's a good group of guys and a good group of gals in there that know what they're doing and at high level. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's always fun, and that's why I definitely wanted to have you on. So I appreciate it, my friend. Another episode of Taps and Tees. We're going to do these. We're going to have about 10 or 20 marketers. I won't bore you with everything, but I think it's important that you know who the good people are out there. So I appreciate it, and see you on the next episode.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.